Are you ready to get the hydrofacial glow? Loved in 87 countries across the world. It's not a facial, it's a hydrofacial. Now available across the UK. Visit hydrofacial.co.uk to find your nearest location.
I think one evening we discovered that a friend of a friend of a friend was Kylie Minogue, and Kylie Minogue had come to see the show that night, allegedly. So I said, because I'm so childish, I said, let's see how many Kylie Minogue song titles we can get into the show tonight.
Hey!
Now, listen to me. So we've got summer coming and the children are off, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you've ever done this. I don't know if you've ever looked at a beach hut.
Yes.
So they're so fabulous and they're great to have if you've got children. You take your food with you. Some of them actually have loos and things now. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at them. To buy one is between 200,000 to 450,000.
Yeah.
To rent one is something like 55 to 75 pounds a day.
No.
Now, why would you do? I mean, so what we do is we get a business together. We go to B&Q or other stores, and we buy some huts, some sheds.
Yes.
And we paint them and put stuff in them, and we go and set them up, and we're going to charge people.
Thank you.
That's called the Wonderbirds beach huts.
Wonderbirds are go.
There are some cheaper ones, Sherry, but I imagine that they're not in very nice areas.
Well, this is your problem.
Wait till you see the ones we build, and then we'll see if they even stand up.
Yeah. It's
I
a
remember
fantastic business.
I remember when I was a kid going with my grandparents, and it was
Me
fantastic.
too.
Yeah.
Bournemouth.
And just sort of changing in there and then running.
I know.
It was fantastic, wasn't it?
But
the fact there was more than a property, more than a sort of a house in town. Crazy.
Why would you buy them? You can't sleep in them.
No.
You know? And between 200 and 450,000.
I think, but and they're all locked up, aren't they now? Whereas before they were always you could just pop into one. Actually,
I know, and change.
It was how the world has changed. I wonder what the next thing is about to explode, and we can get on the bandwagon before it happens.
Yes.
Let's get the beach hut on the bandwagon first.
Wonderbirds beach hut.
Just think though, if you'd held on to every car you ever had from the very beginning. I mean, and you never thought that could happen. Why were things so interchangeable? Why did we just let go of so many things? Every property. I've said to my kids, don't let go of anything. Keep everything.
Yeah.
One day it'll be worth something.
Well, you probably remember this, Debbie, but we bought a British racing green Aston Martin.
Oh, I remember.
And white leather interior, and we bought it for $4,000 or $3,500.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went on the James Martin cooking show, a few weeks ago, and of course he collects classic cars, and I said, well, I've always been into cars, I love cars. He said, what's the best one? I said, well, it was an Aston Martin DB4 Vantage. He went, you haven't got it, have you? I said, oh, no. I said, what did you sell it for? I said, well, we only bought it for about 3.5. I think we sold it for 4.5. He said, that's worth 350,000 now. He said, that's what I'd give you. I went, oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
But I think it's probably even more. He said that particular car, you can't sing like that though, can you?
Move on, darling. It's dead time. Move on. Don't think about it.
We are living, and you can't take it with you anyway.
No. Exactly. Anyway, who's our guest today?
Our guest is the wonderful Robert Glenister. Now, I met Bob many years and years ago when we were doing Sink or Swim in Newcastle, and I've sort of over the years with our paths have crossed. So he's a brilliantly talented actor, and he's just done an amazing series called Sherwood, and he works all the time. In fact, I absolutely adored him in Hustle. He's so versatile. Very versatile and a fabulous actor and a really lovely, interesting man. And here he is, flying into our nest. Hello, Robert. Hello, Robert.
Hello,
Hi, darling.
hello.
Oh,
How are
welcome
you?
welcome to our nest, Robert.
Thank you very much. How exciting. Yes.
So we worked together 1,000 years ago in Sink or Swim in Newcastle. And I remember doing something with you on a coach. Vaguely.
Sorry.
That's right, we did.
Please.
It was a coach and a train station. God, it was the third series, was the last series we did, because it was we did 3 years worth of it. And then because it was about two brothers who lived together in a flat in London, having come down from the north. And then in 1981, the year that you did it, Only Fools and Horses started. So the BBC had 2 shows about two brothers living together. So we got the short straw. So we got the big E. So yeah. That's like showbiz, isn't it?
The thing is, when just recently on Sherwood, I was watching it and thinking,
Yeah.
that young boy playing young Robert looks exactly like he used to look when he was young.
I looked when I was 21. Exactly. Yeah. It's all right. Yeah. No, he went through the processes as we all do to get the gig, and having and ahed and waited for weeks and weeks and weeks, he got it. He got the gig, which was great. I mean, it sort of made sense in a way. But we didn't want it to. I had nothing to do with it. I just kept my distance completely because I didn't want the proverbial accusations of etc. So the whole,
I just kept watching it when I obviously and thinking, I can't believe they got someone to look so much like Rob when he was younger.
Funnily enough,
how I remember that.
Funnily enough, I saw one of my neighbours today. They're sort of halfway through it, and he was talking to a friend of his who'd seen it, and he said, "Oh yeah, I live next door to the bloke who plays the English, the Met Copper." And this friend of his said, "Yeah," he said, "I wasn't sure about the likeness from his younger self." And he said, "Well, actually, that was his child."
His child.
Yeah.
So
Real child.
You've been working with my wonderful friend Andy Jordan on an amazing project for radio. Can you tell us about it?
Well, it was about the first sort of rock festival that happened in this country in I think it was Spalding, Lincolnshire, and it was basically in a shed, organised by local people. But they had Pink Floyd, they had Zoot Money, they had Dino Washington, and they had Jimi Hendrix before he was Jimi Hendrix. So he come over to the UK. He was picked up at the local train station by one of the organisers, put up in a local pub, and took part in this festival. And I think within a matter of weeks, he was a global, not because of the festival, but coincidentally, he became this huge icon. This huge global superstar. But he was, weeks before that, he was playing in a shed in Lincolnshire with Pink Floyd, and I think it must have been quite something, because I don't think anybody really knew the futures that these musicians had ahead of them, and all of them, bar none, became global.
Yeah, my mother and my stepfather used to manage loads of the sort of big bands in the mid '60s, and
Really?
I remember. Loads of them. So I was kind of brought up with that, and I remember these guys coming into the office, and literally my stepfather said, "Oh my God, just sent them away." And as they walked up the stairs, I saw them go into this big van, this sort of like multicolored sort of psychedelic van. And I said to them, and they said, "Oh, it didn't work out." And I said, "Well, who are you? Just in case, I can remember you." And they said, "Our name's Pink Floyd." And I remember thinking, what a funny name.
What a silly name for a rock band. Yeah. But interestingly, Philip Jackson, who we were talking about earlier, who's also in Sherwood and is a very, very good friend of mine, when he was at Bristol University, he was working for the university magazine, and he was sent to interview Jimi Hendrix because he was playing Colston Hall, again, before he was he was quite well known. But so Philip went to sat in Jimi Hendrix's dressing room and talked to Jimi Hendrix and interviewed him while Jimi Hendrix was tuning up his guitar. And then Jimi Hendrix said, let's carry on the conversation. So we walked and they were talking all the way. And Jimi Hendrix then walked on stage into the concert, and Phil watched it from the wings. So he had quite, significant contact with this bloke.
Wow.
And I didn't. He only told me that recently. I had no idea.
Well, I can remember a bill
until I was doing
that my mum and my stepfather had, which was the Walker Brothers, who were top of the bill.
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, who was second top. Cat Stevens, who was third top. And all the kids did all the way through, Jimi Hendrix and Cat Stevens, we want Scott Walker. Didn't even listen.
Really?
Wow.
Really?
Those were the days.
And
darling,
absolutely.
We worked together, didn't we, when we were at the National Theatre doing rehearsal for Richard Bean's new play, directed by Nick Heidner, called Great Britain, about, which we won't mention, a particular court case at the time. And we had to rehearse in secret. And there were secret signs up.
Yes, there were.
And then it transferred to the West End, of course. It was fantastic. But we had so many laughs.
We did. I mean, it probably was the worst kept secret at the National Theatre at the time, actually, because everybody knew what we were doing, but we literally weren't allowed to say what it was about.
No.
And it was a fairly generic title, Great Britain. But you're right, it wasn't like on all the indications in the corridors as to what rehearsal room you were in. It never said Great Britain. It always said the Richard Bean play. So we didn't rehearse. We didn't do it in repertoire, did we? We did a straight run of about 10 weeks at the National, and then we had a bit of a break, and then we went to the Haymarket Theatre.
That's right.
And we had a lot. But also there came a point during the West End run. I don't know if you remember this, that we were getting a little bit bored, to say, to put it mildly, as one does.
Every show, when it runs for a long time, every show.
Exactly. But I think one evening we discovered that a friend of a friend of a friend was Kylie Minogue, and Kylie Minogue had come to see the show that night, allegedly. So I said, because I'm so childish, I said, let's see how many Kylie Minogue song titles we can get into the show tonight.
No,
we did, and I think I Should Be So Lucky, which is and I think that was it. I think we got not shut down, but I think we got knuckles wrapped. I think, yeah. And then I think it went in the show report, which ultimately went to Nick Heidner, who directed it, and we thought we were in for a significant bollocking, And I think his response was, "That sounds quite a clever idea." So
he's so wonderful, Nick. He's so amazing. Yeah. But it was extraordinary to do something that was a sort of ongoing and current politically, socially at the time, and deliver it. It was fascinating.
It was, and also because it was because we had sort of spies in court as well, who were one of whom who co-wrote it was Clive Coleman, who was then the legal correspondent of the BBC, and I think there was a member of the casting department whose dad was a High Court judge. So he gained access for her to go and sit in court on a regular basis. So the information, we were getting information in advance of it going on to any sort of social media or news. So it was quite an exciting project.
It was amazing because we did rehearsal also, and then had to wait for the court case, and we had different endings, and we didn't know which one we were going to do.
That's right, and we'd anticipated one and rehearsed one. And the reverse happened, didn't it? So we had to I think we'd actually done some shows, sort of private shows or public dress rehearsals as such, with the ending we thought was going to happen. And then the verdict came and it was the opposite. So we had to re-rehearse for 4 days and change the whole thing.
But that's the kind of thrilling thing of doing something that's unique and current like that.
Absolutely.
We can't tell you.
We can't tell you because it would be, we get strung up, wouldn't we, really?
Yes, but if you
know,
so,
Debbie,
you'd know it.
No. John says no. Equity ruling, no.
Oh no, we'll have to come and
you'll have to tell us in private.
I think you'd know what the ending is. Really. If we had to change it, then the chances are it's either one or t'other, isn't it? Really, I suppose.
Yeah, but I don't even know what it was about, so I can't even.
Oh, I see. It was. Well, we can say what it's about. It was about phone hacking.
Yes, tell us.
Phone hacking.
It was about the whole phone hacking scandal and certain organisations and publications denying knowledge.
Oh, I see. Ah,
that's quite discreet, isn't it? Well,
yeah, barely read.
Diplomatic.
No. Yeah. And your wonderful wife, Celia, you're one who does producing for radio, fantastic stuff all the time.
Yeah, no, she does. She's not. I mean, the pandemic is the one part of our industry that's really thrived during the pandemic is audio.
Yes.
And because people have been very very imaginative in sort of converting various parts of their houses to sort of makeshift studios. And I mean, Celia, I kid you not, for Audible, during the first lockdown, Celia recorded a 21-part dramatization of Sense and Sensibility, where her narrator was in Los Angeles, her leading lady was in France, and everybody was dotted all over the place. And we all had, everybody, I say we all, because I was in it as well, because we do believe in nepotism in our family. But yeah, so everybody had to sort of record themselves and press the right buttons, and then she ultimately, and she put it all together. Yeah.
But isn't it wonderful how that, in the awful thing of lockdown, how that was liberated, and now it's normal to do that now.
Absolutely, yeah. And often because voiceover or production companies, they want to know if you've got a home studio, because it means they don't have to shell out to hire one in town. So if you haven't got a home studio, the downside of it is that you might not be in the running for certain jobs because you haven't got the self-record capabilities.
Do you have a studio, or do you have an Isobox?
A what? An Isobox?
Isobox.
No, I don't know what that is.
So an Isobox, it kind of looks like the old-fashioned hair dryers that you used to have. It's a box, and you put your head in it. And I did a whole series for Radio 4 on it. It's just absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Goes in the corner, doesn't take any room, but the actual quality of sound is incredible.
Well, I have to say, I sat in my cupboard under a duvet, and I think it's the same thing.
Not quite, but
a lot
and significant and cheaper.
Yes. Robert.
I'll get onto that. Yeah, no, we got a load of soundproofing stuff, and we just stuck it to the wall. We'll put it up against the walls, basically, and it worked. It's fine.
Thank you, Robert, because I've just worked with Phil Jackson, who I've known for forever. He's like a brother. And we've just done a comedy murder thing. And he was telling me about Sherwood. And he was saying what an amazing piece of telly it is. And I'm assuming you agree with that, because it is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we all thought it was good, but we didn't quite expect the reaction that we got from it. Because I think it was, it's a passion project of James Graham, who grew up in that Nottinghamshire mining community. And he's hugely passionate about the divisions it caused. I mean, throughout the country, not just in Nottinghamshire, but I mean, in Scotland and Wales, most predominantly in Yorkshire. And it's, I don't quite know how we managed to do it, because there were so many fascinating characters within it, and he managed to weave them all into this story, which ostensibly was inspired by, bizarrely, two unrelated murders in this small mining community in Nottinghamshire. Both of the perpetrators disappeared into Sherwood Forest, and they couldn't find them because it was so dense. And I think it was so dense, even thermal imaging didn't work. So they had to recruit other police forces, including the Met, to come and help find them. Consequently, the Met, coming back into Nottinghamshire, having been up during the miners' strike and behaved pretty badly during the strikes, it rekindled all of those feelings that had happened back in 1984. And that was the basic premise of the story. And I think it was, it became very prescient because of Brexit and about divisiveness within families, within communities, within friendships, So it was a real sort of privilege to be asked to be a part of it. It really was.
It was very hard to watch. Because, and particularly if you went through those times, because
which you did.
It rekindled everything, all your emotions and your anger and your blaming of whom. Who did we all blame? Well, there was lots of people to blame.
Exactly. But interestingly, I think that there were more people in the Nottinghamshire collieries who stayed at work than there were who came out and stayed out on strike. Consequently, and this is true, when a Nottingham football team like Mansfield Town and Notts Forest go and play a Yorkshire football team, say Leeds or Bradford, whatever, the insult thrown by the Yorkshire supporters to the Nottinghamshire supporters is scab. They still shout scab to this day.
No, I know they do to this day.
That's how deep those feelings ran.
Yeah,
it rekindled all those feelings. It's horrible.
It is. It was awful.
Robert,
I want to talk to you about the fact you've been brought up in the industry, haven't you? Your dad was a director, and of course we've talked about your son, and your brother's an actor. And that must have been a good sort of a feel-good thing when you came into the industry. You actually knew all the pitfalls and how to handle things. And so did that help you?
Oh, it did. Yeah. No, my dad, he didn't bring work home with him per se, but I mean, we were always, he wasn't a show busy type in that sense. He didn't have lots of famous people. I mean, I think occasionally people would come around. But I think he was he knew the pitfalls of certainly, as you know, in the acting profession. I mean, and I think it's even sort of more difficult now than it was, 30, 40 odd years ago, much more difficult. Yeah. But I think there was a sort of an understanding that, you had to build a resilience. You had to get used to rejection. You had to get used to not getting the gigs you wanted. You had to get used to other people who you were perhaps in direct competition with doing better than you. So it was, and interestingly, my daughter trained at the Bristol Old Vic School to be an actress, and she came out into the sort of the big wide world, and she really didn't like it. I mean, she really found it very disheartening, and so she's now gone off on a different path and works in publishing.
Right.
I think also what's happened, because my son left drama school about 3 or 4 years ago, so he had 18 months sort of going up for stuff, and all of a sudden the pandemic hit. So it was terrible. It was just awful and I think, I don't know, but I think a lot of people had been forced to take on other jobs, and not just actors, but I mean people working in our industry, in the theatre especially, and can't afford to go back. They can't afford to go back into it now because they're reliant on the alternatives they have to take.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the West End, I'm doing a show in the West End at the moment, and that's quite buzzy. I mean, all those.
Good. What are you doing?
I'm doing the Seagull at the Harold Pinter, part of Jamie Lloyd's season, which we started 2 years ago. We did 4 previews, and then the West End shut down.
Wow. So
we were at the Playhouse then. Now we literally just opened a couple of weeks ago at the Pinter, and we're there till the 10th of September. But we've had instances. We've had 2 principals going down, and we've got 4 understudies covering all the parts. And the 2 principals who went down were covered by the same person. So another person. I mean, you can make it work. I mean, it's flying by the seat of your pants without question. But there's Doctor Theatre and all that. It's sort of.
Well, that's what we all do. That's what we've done all our lives. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, Robert, it's been such a joy having on the show.
Thank you.
And darling, I mean, I know you're doing the Seagull until September, but is there anything else in the pipeline you can talk about?
Well, not in the immediate future. I mean, the BBC have recommissioned another series of shows, and I don't quite know how that's going to work. I mean, that's James' problem. I know, because it was only ever done as intending to be a one-off.
Yeah.
But they've so I don't know how that will materialize. But I mean, if anybody can make it work, James Graham can. So I mean, I don't know if it'll involve any of us. It might be a completely different community that he writes about. So you sort of wait and see, really. But
and also, Robert, it's the aftermath of that period as well, which would be very interesting because of people not working, and it was a terrible time from that moment on for probably 15, 20 years,
Absolutely.
And that whole there is a story there.
Well, I think there's a story. I think you're right, because I think the aftermath of what happened, and also all the people living in those old mining villages which haven't got the pit anymore, but they've still got the mining social clubs, and they've still got families who were part of, people who stayed working and people who stayed out on strike, and
that's
they're still. I think that's an interesting.
It is, and all those houses, of course, were knocked down.
Yeah.
They lost their community because those houses were knocked down, and they were stuck into flats and things, which everybody fought against. So it probably is a really good story, actually.
Yeah, no, I think there's something. There's definitely something there for sure.
And something maybe with Notts Forest and Notts County, because my cousin played for Notts Forest, and I remember the time, and so then there's quite a few stories around that, I think, that would be interesting to know what really happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that's true.
And
And as I say,
the disappearance of Scargill as well. He cleverly disappeared, you know. So I think there's all that to talk about.
Well, as soon as there's more news, darling, come back and tell us everything.
Yeah, tell us.
I'll let you know.
Absolutely.
I will. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Lovely
so
to
much
see you
for
all.
joining
All
us,
right.
Robert. See you
Bye,
Good to
soon.
see you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye now. Bye bye.
What an amazing
True.
those
You know,
stories.
that is true about
journey.
Sherwood.
Amazing.
Because after 84, going into 94, and beyond that, the stories were horrendous in Nottinghamshire. You know, they lost their homes, they lost their villages, they, you know, they didn't survive, and there was a lot of it was just awful and so aggressive, and so maybe there is a bigger story out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's very interesting.
It is, isn't it? Fascinating.
Yeah.
What an amazing afternoon. That was so fab.
Yeah.
So lovely to see him. And also that radio series that he's done about the first festival is available on BBC Sounds, so you can find it.
Right,
So,
okay.
and my friend Andy Jordan directed it, so I imagine it was very good. And why wasn't I in it? No, did I say that?
Yes, you said it out loud, darling.
Oh, sorry.
And we all feel the same.
We all
We
feel
do.
it. Anyway, we will see you. We'll see you on Friday.
See you.
Have a nice day.
Bye. Bye.